coochie coocher.
Most European Americans, white Americans, had not been introduced to the music, to the art of the Black experience. When the Harlem Renaissance breaks out, many people, and you have to remember this is 1920s, the roaring 20s, people are looking for ways to be entertained. And of course, the World War I is over, the Great War, the war to end all wars is over. So people are going to look for ways to be entertained. Hearing about Harlem and going to Harlem became exciting, new, different, and people went. They went to a place that others would say, you don't really want to go up there. But in fact, going up there could get you the time of your life. And going into, you also have to remember the early 20s during Prohibition, everyone wants to do just the opposite of what the law says. So of course, that's another reason to go to Harlem. Go against the grain. Women, go against the grain socially. Cut your hair, wear the short flapper dresses. Go against societal norms. Harlem was that for white America. And of course, going there, and once you get a taste, if you will, of the music of the time, and you get a taste of the literature of the time, of the moment, it then becomes a part of the soul, because that is, of course, one of the things that you can say about African American music. It becomes a part of the soul. And going back downtown and not hearing that sound, you want to bring it with you. And that's exactly how African American music began to filter into the mainstream.
Harlem became the mecca for Black America, and we found blacks, often very talented blacks, Duke Ellington coming from Washington, musicians coming from the South, from Louisiana, from Chicago, all coming to Harlem. So we get this blend of culture, whether it be music or literature, poetry, all coming to Harlem. You had some of the great musicians of that period coming. Also, within literature, there was Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Claude McKay, just a host of artists and writers. But there's also something else happening in the 1920s, and that's called Prohibition. And this absence of this prohibition against alcoholic beverages really helped spawn speakeasies, and very often whites from downtown were looking for places to go and places where they could have entertainment, which included liquor, and Harlem became a major force there. The two really worked together, Prohibition and the blacks who were migrating to Harlem during the 1920s. Prohibition helps to attract more whites from downtown who see the entertainers, and they begin to see the talent that is in Harlem, and they begin to read the literature more and more. It's interesting to note that what is regarded as the era of the Harlem Renaissance, about 1920 to 1932, are the years of Prohibition.
Throughout the 1920s, there were many significant contributions made by black performers in New York. Duke Ellington and his six-piece band arrived in Manhattan. Following Ellington came numerous legendary black performers who would have a profound impact on the history of entertainment in America. They appeared in venues such as the Cotton Club, the Apollo Theater, the Savoy, and many others. Among them were legendary names such as Cab Calloway, Louis Armstrong, Bill Bojangles Robinson, Nat King Cole, Lena Horne, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and of course the great Count Basie.
I was leaving from Chicago to go to New York with my band. And there was a guy there that was playing organ. Count Basie, he could make an organ talk. I dug this cat so, and I said, well, man, I'm going on to New York. I said, and when I get to New York, I want you to be a piano player in my band.
The most significant business development that changed the history of black New Yorkers forever began as a little-noticed housing boom in Upper Manhattan. By 1904-1905, the real estate market collapsed in what was then the upper middle-class white area of Harlem. A shrewd real estate entrepreneur named Philip Payton decided to put into play Booker T. Washington's theory that blacks could make it in America if their race got a bank book. Payton's Afro-American Realty Company spearheaded the creation and growth of Black Harlem when he cheaply obtained vacant apartments and then rented them to black tenants. Blacks followed newspaper ads, articles, and cheaper rents as they moved to Harlem en masse, and many black churches followed. By 1915, over 50,000 blacks lived in Harlem. There were black middle and upper-class neighborhoods in Harlem, such as Strivers Row on West 139th Street. In time, black New Yorkers would flourish in the biggest black enclave in the nation, and it became the energetic center for African-American culture, changing New York and America forever.
Philip Payton was an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, and he often told the story about two white building owners in Harlem on 134th Street who were feuding one against the other. And one actually approached Payton and encouraged him, offered him the opportunity to put blacks into the building. This was a way that the property owner figured that he could get back at his neighbor. And what the property owner didn't realize was that this was going to be the start. This was going to be the start of many thousands of blacks coming to Harlem. The real key to Harlem is the development of the IRT subway in 1904. Once that subway opens and allows people to travel from lower Manhattan to uptown, that really was the major spur for development in Harlem.
The jazz music that came from the Harlem Renaissance had many roots. It sprang from the hymns and spirituals of black culture, ragtime music, and most significantly, from the New Orleans jazz played by African-American musicians from the South.
When you play jazz, New Orleans jazz, you got to give that music something special. You got to give a lilt, a beat, a momentum. So you got to pluck that bass or play that instrument a certain way, a certain lilt. Nobody's in a hurry, all that running and jumping. No, you take it easy. New York, in 1930, the majority of the bass players played tubas. Bass tubas, big, beautiful, big brassy or big silver tubas. That was a part of the rhythm section. Duke Ellington hired Wellman Broad and gave the music a whole new sound. It's more resonant, and it hits you in here, bass fiddle, which a tuba doesn't. Tuba hits you here, but that vibration of that bass hits you in here. You can feel it on the bandstand. It shakes the chairs.
Significantly, these performers attracted a mixed audience. It opened opportunities for black entertainers and artists to have their work exposed to mainstream America. And yet, despite their acceptance in this regard, even the most famous of the black entertainers still face the obstacles of a racist America. One can only imagine the torment and frustration many of these black performers faced in these times.
At the end of their shows, the black performers, the African-American performers, couldn't even go downtown into white America and be accepted. They'd be thrown out, drummed out of the very bandstands that they were proficient at standing on and playing. It must have been very disheartening for them to try to be accepted. They certainly would be accepted uptown by white audiences, but those same people might, in no uncertain terms, and certainly not very friendly, kick them out of any white club if they ever tried to go in.
Racism was not unique to New York, nor was it unique to the South. It was truly a national situation. So that a Duke Ellington or a Louis Armstrong, they had lived in America, so they were familiar with racism.
Before the Harlem Renaissance, it was definitely necessary for African Americans, if they were in the entertainment business, to give the white audience what they wanted. Playing in the black audiences, of course, they would also. But for certain, if you wanted to really eat regularly and if you really wanted to make a living as an entertainer, you had to give white audiences what they wanted, which was stereotypical shucking and jiving, just getting along, kind of the ya's a boss kind of thing. And that was accepted, and that was acceptable. That was what was expected. When the Harlem Renaissance comes along, that kind of blows the stereotype, especially musically. Sounds that had not ever been heard. We are a people of great passion, and we're a people who play it off the cuff. I always call it, we don't paint by numbers. We don't dance by the numbers on the floor. We take that and then we incorporate it and make it uniquely ours. It's called soul. And when you do that and you come from your soul, then you're going to go with the rhythm of it. You're going to go with the movement of it. You're going to go with the beat.
Indeed, since the time of the Harlem Renaissance, African American entertainers, actors, musicians, artists, and writers have had an enormously profound impact on American culture and continue to do so to this day. Yet all of these many great contributions of the last 5 decades had their roots in the Harlem Renaissance, a time when Harlem, New York, was the cultural center and symbol of African American pride and success.